Our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, speaks to us the austerity and the severity of the persecution against the Christian community. Against the community of the early Christians in Jerusalem. The austerity and the severity of the persecution. Can you imagine here? It says here, Saul was ravaging the church, entering house after house, dragging off both men and women. He committed them to prison. House to house persecution. If you believe, if you are a believer, they will put you into prison. But what is interesting is this: the more they were persecuted, the more they increased in numbers. Suffice it to say, persecution makes their faith stronger and stronger. Instead of being discouraged, instead of being afraid, they became bold and bravely evangelizers. And they were scattered. The first reading says, they were scattered to proclaim. They were in one accord, and they listened eagerly to what was said by Philip. Our first reading for today is reminding us the reality of persecution in our life. And you know what? Sometimes persecution is God's way to purify and to strengthen our faith. Persecution is God's way to make us strong. When we are persecuted, we should not be discouraged, but rather, like the first Christian believers, we have to follow their example that we may become bold and brave evangelizers. Remember, during the pandemic, and pandemic is a form of persecution, because we are threatened by the virus. The virus is like Saul, dragging us into prison and making our home as our prison. And I think during that time the devil is happy because church were closed. But what is interesting is this, and what is the good news is this: churches were closed, but houses were turned to be domestic church. Churches were closed, but houses turned into domestic church. And sometimes in our life, we need to experience darkness to appreciate the value of light. We need to undergo sickness to appreciate the importance of health. They were persecuted, but they increased in numbers, because persecution is God's way to strengthen His disciples. The bottom line that I would like to share with you today is this: in our life, sometimes the worst things that happen to us brings out the best in us. Difficult times often brings out the best in people. They were persecuted, but they scattered and they listened. As what I told you, they listened eagerly to what Philip said, hearing and seeing the signs that he did. Many who were possessed were cleansed, and many who were paralyzed and lame were cured. And there was great joy in that city. Friends, my dear parishioners, when you experience different forms of persecutions, our responsorial psalm is suggesting us a beautiful lesson. When you are persecuted, cry out to God with joy. Cry out to God with joy. Never let a bad situation bring out the worst in you, but rather let the worst situation brings out the best in you. They were persecuted, but they continue to cast out evil spirit. They were persecuted, but it never stopped them to bring healing for those who are sick. Now, when people reject you because of your faith, when people discriminate you because of your faith, cry out to God with joy. When you are criticized because of your faith, cry out to God with joy. When you've done nothing wrong, but people hate you and speak false accusation against you, cry out to God with joy. Because the gospel says, if others exclude you, don't worry, because someone up there will include you. And the gospel, it says, I will not reject anyone who comes to me. Because God will never drive out anyone who comes to Him. Today, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, when you are persecuted in different forms, do not be discouraged, but rather cry out to God with joy. And connecting it in our gospel, when you are persecuted, come to Him in the Eucharist. Because He says, everything that the Father gives me will come to me, and anyone who comes to me, I will never drive them away. But I will raise them up on the last day.